The megabus smelled like recycled air and energy drinks. I got off in Scranton around 4 in the afternoon with a duffel bag, $43 in cash, and a phone that only worked when I could steal Wi-Fi. The child support notice was folded in my back pocket, past due by 2 months. I'd stopped opening the emails after the first one, but they kept coming anyway, piling up in an inbox I couldn't check without a connection. I stood on the curb for a minute, just breathing. The bus pulled away behind me, diesel exhaust hanging in the cold. January in Pennsylvania. Gray sky, gray slush along the sidewalk. Everything kind of washed out and tired. I didn't have a plan past this. Just the address I'd written on the back of a gas station receipt and the idea that maybe I could get hired fast enough to make rent somewhere before the week ran out. That was optimistic, probably stupid too. But I was out of better options. The car thing happened in Harrisburg. I'd been sleeping in the back seat for maybe 5 nights, parked behind a closed-down Kmart where nobody seemed to care. It wasn't comfortable, but it worked. I had a blanket, a rolled-up hoodie for a pillow, and I kept my stuff organized in the duffel so I could move fast if I needed to. Then I woke up on a Tuesday and the car was gone. Not stolen, towed. There was a fluorescent orange sticker on the pavement where I'd parked, and when I called the number it connected me to a guy named Mickey Mendoza who said the lot owner had filed a complaint. $50 a day storage fee, $200 to get it released, plus the tow. He rattled it off without pausing, and I could hear him eating something crunchy on the other end. "I don't have that," I said. "Then I guess it stays here," Mickey said. He didn't sound mean about it, just factual. I asked if I could at least grab my registration and proof of insurance. He said the lot opened at 8. I walked over there that morning, and Mickey met me at the chain-link gate with a clipboard and a Sunoco coffee cup. He was a big guy, maybe 6'1", stocky, with a stained jacket that said Mendoza Towing across the back in peeling letters. He unlocked the gate and walked me to my car without saying much. I grabbed the paperwork from the glove box, checked the trunk to see if anything was missing. It wasn't. Mickey just stood there watching, arms crossed, chewing on a toothpick. "You coming back for it?" he asked. "Probably not." He nodded. That was it. I left the keys on the dash and walked back to the bus station with my duffel and no ride and no way to keep moving unless I figured something out fast. I found the job listing on Indeed at a public library in Harrisburg. 24-hour access to computers if you had a card, and they didn't check if you were local. I sat there for an hour scrolling through postings, most of them asking for experience I didn't have or certifications I couldn't afford. Then I saw it. Overnight clerk, Sunoco Station, I-81 near Clark's Summit. Immediate hire, quick pay, minimal experience required. The address put it right next to a Love's truck stop, which meant it'd be busy enough to stay open all night, but probably not busy enough to be picky about who they hired. I screenshotted the listing on my phone, checked the Greyhound schedule, and bought a ticket north with 18 of my $43. It felt like the only immediate path to cash. Maybe not a good path, but immediate. The bus left at noon. I sat in the back and watched Pennsylvania roll by through a smudged window. Hills, bare trees, patches of old snow in the fields. I didn't let myself think too hard about what I'd do if they didn't hire me. One thing at a time. I got to the station a little before 5. The sun was already dropping, that flat winter light that makes everything look colder than it is. The Sunoco sat right off the exit ramp, a 2-pump setup with a convenience store attached and a hand-painted sign out front that said, "Open 24 HRs." Across the access road I could see the Loves, bigger and brighter, with trucks idling in neat rows. I walked in and waited at the counter. There was a guy at the register, maybe 50, with a red vest and the kind of tired posture you get from standing in one place all day. He glanced up when the door chimed, but didn't say anything. "I'm here about the overnight job," I said. He looked at me for a second, then turned and called toward the back. "Amber." A woman came out from the office behind the counter. 5'5", dark hair pulled back in a bun, sharp eyes that didn't waste time. She wore a Sunoco polo and black slacks, and she had a lanyard around her neck with keys and a laminated card clipped to it. "You called?" she asked. "No," I said. "I saw the listing online. I can start tonight if you need someone." She looked me over. I tried to stand straight, look dependable. I hadn't showered since Harrisburg, but I'd washed my face in the bus station bathroom, and I wasn't wearing anything too wrinkled. The duffel probably didn't help, but I kept it at my side and didn't make excuses. "You got a resume?" she asked. "Not printed," I said. "But I've done stocking, register work, inventory. I show up on time and I don't call out." That last part was mostly true. I'd been late a few times at my last job, but I didn't get fired for attendance. I got fired for telling the manager his scheduling system was garbage, which probably wasn't the smartest move, but I was right. Amber didn't ask for references. She just nodded and said, "You okay working 11 to 7? "Yeah." "Alone?" "Yeah." "You fall asleep easy?" "No." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "Good. Last guy couldn't stay awake past 3. I need someone who can handle the whole shift without me babysitting." I nodded. Didn't mention that I'd been sleeping in a car for a week and my tolerance for discomfort was pretty high at this point. She stepped back and looked at the guy in the red vest. "Donald, you good to close out?" Donald shrugged. "Sure." Amber turned back to me. "You're hired. 50 a night, cash under the table. You work 6 nights, you get 300. Miss a shift without calling, you're done. Show up drunk or high, you're done. Don't follow the rules, you're done. Clear?" "Clear," I said. She reached under the counter and pulled out a laminated card, about the size of an index card with printed text on both sides. She slid it across to me. "Read this," she said. "Tonight I'll walk you through everything. After that, you're on your own." I picked up the card. The text was small, single-spaced, numbered 1 through 12. I didn't read it all right then, just skimmed enough to see words like transaction, customer, parking lot, receipt. "What is this?" I asked. "Rules," Amber said. "You follow them exactly, no exceptions. You do that, the job's easy." She said it in a way that didn't invite questions. I folded the card and put it in my pocket next to the child support notice. "One more thing," she said. She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter, and her voice dropped just a little. "I'm training you tonight because the last overnight clerk quit in an ambulance." I didn't say anything. Didn't ask what happened or why. I just stood there holding my duffel and feeling the weight of that sentence settle somewhere in my chest. Amber watched me for a second, maybe waiting to see if I'd back out. I didn't. "Shift starts at 11, she said. "Be here at 10:30. The line landed heavy. The sun was almost gone outside, and through the window I could see the fluorescent lights from the loves starting to glow brighter against the dusk. I nodded, and Amber turned and walked back into the office without another word. I stood there while Donald rang up a customer buying scratchers and a pack of Marlboros. The overnight hours were 6 hours away, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. Amber trained me the way you'd teach someone to operate a photocopier. Fast. No wasted words. Just the steps that mattered. She stood behind the counter with the register open and pointed to the scanner, the card reader, the cash drawer. Showed me how to ring up prepay fuel, how to authorize the pumps from the console, how to key in lottery numbers without triggering a void. Her hands moved quick and sure. She'd done this 1,000 times and didn't care if I'd done it 0. Outside, trucks rumbled past on the access road. The loves across the way had maybe 30 rigs idling in rows, their running lights cutting through the dusk. Every few minutes the coffee machine behind me hissed and gurgled. The whole store smelled like burnt French roast and cleaning solution. I kept my attention split, half on what Amber was doing with the register, half on the door. She didn't ask if I was following along, just kept going. Showed me the tobacco inventory locked in the cabinet under the counter, the ID scanner we were supposed to use for anyone who looked under 40, the binder where I'd log fuel deliveries if a tanker showed up. She flipped to a page marked Overnight and tapped it twice with her index finger. Log anything unusual here, she said. Time, description, what you did about it. I asked what counted as unusual. She looked at me for a second. You'll know. That was it. She moved on. She walked me through the coffee station, showed me how to swap out the pots before they burned, how to restock the creamers and stir sticks, pointed to the mop closet, the breaker panel, the back door that was supposed to stay locked unless I was taking trash to the dumpster. She didn't explain why, just stated the facts and kept moving. I watched her hands more than her face, the way she touched things. Efficient. No extra motion. She opened the top drawer under the register, and I saw rolls of receipt tape, a box of pens, a stack of blue paper slips held together with a binder clip. Road receipts, she said, tapping the stack. If someone asks for one, you give them the top slip. Don't fill it out, just hand it over. I asked when that happened. Not often. She closed the drawer. But if it does, don't forget. The way she said it made it sound important. More important than the coffee or the lottery scanner or anything else she'd shown me. I nodded. She moved on again. Amber walked me through the pumps next, stepping outside into the cooling air. The canopy lights were already on, buzzing faintly overhead. She showed me how to reset a pump if it jammed, how to check for skimmers, how to lock the nozzles if someone drove off. Her breath misted a little in the cold. She didn't zip her jacket. We went back inside. She pulled the laminated card from under the counter and set it in front of me. Read it, she said. Front and back. I picked it up. The front had the 12 rules I'd skimmed earlier. I turned it over. The back had 5 more. They looked different. Photocopied, maybe. The text was smaller, single-spaced, a little blurry around the edges like someone had copied a copy. The numbered list started at 1 again. 1. Keep the canopy lights on all night. Do not turn them off for any reason. 2. If someone asks for a road receipt, give them the blue slip from the top drawer. Do not ask questions. 3. Never ring up fuel for anyone you cannot see in the window glass. 4. From 1:11 a.m. to 1:17 a.m., lock yourself in the bathroom. Do not flush. Do not open the door until 1:17 exactly. 5. If a car with no plates parks at pump 6, pull the fire alarm and leave immediately. I read through them twice. Then I looked up at Amber. She was watching me, waiting. I asked if this was serious. Completely. I asked what happened if I didn't follow them. Don't find out. Her voice didn't change, still flat, still tired, but something in the way she held her shoulders told me she wasn't messing around. I looked back at the card. The bathroom thing bugged me. 1:11 to 1:17 was 6 minutes. Specific. Weird, but not impossible. I asked why. Doesn't matter why, Amber said. Just do it. I didn't push. I figured if she wanted to explain, she would have. She tapped the counter. Read them back to me, in order. So I did. Started with number 1. Keep the canopy lights on all night. Don't turn them off for any reason. She nodded. Number 2. If someone asks for a road receipt, give them the blue slip from the top drawer. Don't ask questions. Another nod. Number 3. Never ring up fuel for anyone I can't see in the window glass. She didn't blink. Number 4. From 1:11 to 1:17, lock myself in the bathroom. Don't flush. Don't open the door until 1:17 exactly. Her expression didn't shift. Number 5. If a car with no plates parks at pump 6, pull the fire alarm and leave immediately. She waited a beat after I finished. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a key ring. 3 keys total, One for the register, one for the back door, one for the front. You're on your own after I leave, she said, setting the keys on the counter between us. I don't stay late. Ever. You need something. Call the number on the binder. I'll get back to you when I can. I asked if anyone else worked overnight. Just you. I asked what happened to the last guy. Ambulance, she said. Same word she'd used earlier. No elaboration. I picked up the keys. They were cold and heavier than I expected. Amber glanced at the clock on the wall behind me. It was a little past 9:30. She pulled her own keys from her pocket and headed for the door. Good luck, she said. Then she left. I stood there with the scanner, the register, and the laminated rule card propped up next to the lottery display. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly. Outside, a sedan pulled up to pump 3. I watched the driver get out, swipe a card, and start fueling. Normal. Quiet. I didn't know what else to do, so I started reading the front side rules again. Standard stuff mostly. No personal phone use. No sitting behind the counter. Keep the coffee fresh. Restock as you go. At 10, the door chimed. Donald walked in, same red vest, same tired posture. He had a pack of gum in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked up when the chime sounded, saw me, and stopped. Oh, you actually came back. I said, yeah. He walked to the counter and started shutting down the second register. Didn't say anything for a minute. Just counted out the cash drawer, logged the total in the binder, and locked it in the safe under the counter. Then he straightened up and looked at me. So Amber showed you the card, right? I said, yeah. Both sides? I nodded. He chewed his gum slowly. Okay, cool. Just don't ignore it. I asked if he'd worked overnight before. Hell no. He said it fast, almost laughed. I'm out of here by 6 every day. Amber doesn't stay late either. You noticed that, right? I said I did. Yeah. He shoved his hands in his pockets. The station gets weird after midnight. I don't know what it is. I don't want to know. But the people who work overnight either quit fast or they figure it out. I asked what the last guy did wrong. Donald shrugged. No idea. I just know the ambulance showed up around 4 a.m. and he didn't come back. He grabbed his jacket from under the counter and headed for the door. Stopped halfway and turned back. Set an alarm for 1:10, he said. Don't forget the bathroom thing. Amber's serious about that one. Then he left too. I stood there alone. The clock on the wall read 10:03. The coffee machine hissed. A truck rumbled past outside. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. No service, but the clock still worked. I set an alarm for 1:10 a.m., just in case. Then I propped the laminated card up next to the register where I could see it and started watching the clock. I tried to treat the whole thing like regular workplace talk. Donald had probably been there too long and got spooked by nothing. Amber seemed practical enough, just covering her bases with the rules. That's what I told myself anyway. I figured if I kept my head down and stayed employed for 6 nights, I'd have $300 and could figure out the next step from there. The station stayed quiet for the first hour. A few cars pulled in for gas, paid at the pump, drove off. One guy came inside for Newports and a Monster, didn't say anything beyond swiping his card. I restocked the candy bars near the register because the Snickers were pushed to the back, and it gave me something to do besides stand there. The coffee machine hissed every few minutes. I kept the laminated card next to the register where I could see it without picking it up. At 11:06, the canopy lights outside cut out. Not flickered, just died. The pumps dropped into this dull shadow that made the whole lot look wrong. I could still see the outline of the concrete islands and the pump housings, but everything past the first few feet turned into flat grayness. The interstate lights were still visible across the access road, and the Love's sign glowed red in the distance, but the station itself sat in a pocket of almost dark that felt heavier than it should have been. I stood behind the counter for maybe 10 seconds just staring out the window. My first thought was whether this counted as something I needed to log in the binder. My second thought was Rule 1. Keep canopy lights on all night, without exception. I didn't waste time thinking about a third thing. I went around the counter and headed for the back where Amber had shown me the breaker panel. It was mounted on the wall near the mop closet. Gray metal door with a rusted latch. I flipped it open and scanned the rows of switches. Most were labeled in faded marker. Coolers. Register 1. Register 2. Signage. Near the bottom I found canopy. The breaker was flipped. Not tripped, just off, which didn't make sense because I hadn't touched it and nobody else had been back here. I flipped it back on and heard the hum kick in outside. I walked back to the counter and looked through the window. The lights were on again, bright white circles spreading across the pavement and the pump islands. Everything looked normal. Except it didn't. The bright circles were the same size they'd been before. Same intensity. But the darkness beyond them felt closer now. Heavier. It was hard to explain, even to myself. The edge of the light hadn't physically moved inward, but that's what it felt like. I stood there staring at pump 6 on the far end and couldn't shake the sense that the shadow past it had pushed in a few feet while the lights were off. I shook my head and went back to restocking. Probably just my eyes adjusting. That was it. I checked my phone. 11:12. The alarm was still set for 1:10. I put it back in my pocket and straightened the chip rack even though it was already straight. At 11:40 the door chime rang and a guy in a reflective vest walked in. He was maybe 6 feet, medium build, wearing one of those yellow safety vests road crews use. He had a badge clipped to the chest that I could see from across the store. It read, Tim Murray in block letters. His hair was dark and damp, combed flat against his head. His face didn't have much expression. Just blank. He walked toward the counter without looking at the shelves or the coffee station or anything else. Didn't browse, didn't pause, just came straight over. I straightened up. Hey. He stopped in front of the register. His eyes were pale gray and didn't blink much. I need a road receipt. His voice was flat, polite, but with no warmth behind it. I'd heard people talk that way before, usually when they were annoyed but trying not to show it. This wasn't that. This was just empty. I nodded. Sure. I started to reach for the register, then stopped. He hadn't bought anything, hadn't even looked at the pumps outside. Road receipts were supposed to be for fuel, I thought. Proof of purchase for mileage reimbursement or whatever. But Amber had said to give the blue slip to anyone who asked without filling it out, and Rule 2 said the same thing. Give the slip from the top drawer. No questions. I pulled my hand back from the register and opened the drawer under the counter instead. The blue slips were still clipped together where Amber had left them. I took the top one off the stack and held it out. Tim Murray didn't move right away. He just stood there looking at the slip in my hand. Then he reached out and took it. His fingers were cold. I didn't touch them, but I could feel it somehow, just from how close his hand got to mine. That's when I glanced past him at the front window. The glass reflected the interior of the store, the shelves behind him, the coffee station to the left, the ceiling lights, me standing at the register, but not him. There was no reflection where Tim Murray should have been. Just empty space between the shelves and the counter, a gap in the glass that didn't make sense. I could see the vest if I looked directly at him, the badge with his name on it, the damp hair. But the window showed nothing. Just the store continuing behind him without interruption. My stomach dropped. I looked back at his face. He was watching me, not smiling, not frowning, just watching with those flat gray eyes. I remembered Rule 3. Never ring up fuel for anyone not visible in window glass. I hadn't rung anything up yet. I'd stopped myself without really knowing why, just followed Rule 2 instead. My hand was still resting on the edge of the counter. I pulled it back slowly and let it drop to my side. Tim Murray folded the blue slip in half and slipped it into his vest pocket. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a quarter, setting it on the counter between us. The quarter was wet, not damp, wet. A small pool of water spread out from under it on the laminate surface, thin and clear. "Thanks," he said, same flat tone. He turned and walked toward the door. I watched him cross the store. His boots didn't make sound on the tile. He reached the door, and it swung open without him touching the handle. I saw his hand stay at his side the whole time, then he was outside under the canopy lights, walking past Pump 3 toward the access road. I looked down at the quarter. The water around it was already starting to evaporate, leaving a faint ring. I didn't pick it up. I looked back at the window. He was gone. Just the empty lot and the pumps and the darkness past the light. I stood there for a long time. My heart was going faster than it should have been. My hands felt cold. I kept replaying it. The reflection that wasn't there. The door opening on its own. The wet quarter sitting on the counter in front of me like proof I hadn't imagined the whole thing. I'd been trying to treat the rules like workplace paranoia, safety theater, something Amber put together to cover liability or because the last guy freaked out over nothing. But Tim Murray hadn't been nothing. I didn't know what he'd been. I didn't have words for it. But the moment had tipped into something I couldn't explain, and I was standing alone in a gas station at 11:43 at night with a wet quarter on the counter and 4 hours left on my shift. I picked up the laminated card and read Rule 3 again, then Rule 2, then all 5 on the back. I put the card down and checked my phone. 1:10 alarms still set. I left the quarter where it was and went to restock the coolers because I needed to do something with my hands. The quarter sat there for maybe 3 seconds after Tim Murray left. Then it moved. Didn't roll normal. It tipped up onto its edge and started spinning in place, slow at first, then faster. I watched it wobble across the counter in a tight curve, heading straight for the register base. It tapped the metal with a soft clink and stopped flat, heads up. That was it. Then every pump outside clicked on at once. I heard them through the glass. 6 separate clicks, sharp and mechanical, all synchronized. The canopy lights stayed steady, but the pump screens all lit green. I looked out the window and saw the nozzles hanging in their cradles, triggers down, fuel running. No cars. Pump 3 was spilling gasoline onto the concrete pad in a steady stream. Pump 1 too. Pump 6 had a nozzle on the ground with fuel pooling around it. The others were running into empty air where a tank should have been, like invisible vehicles had pulled up and someone had authorized them all. I didn't think. I went straight to the console next to the register and hit the red emergency shutoff button Amber had shown me during training. It was a big square button under a plastic flip cover. I pushed it hard enough to feel the click. The pumps kept running. I hit it again. Nothing changed. Fuel kept spilling under the canopy, spreading across the concrete in dark patches that caught the light. I could smell it now through the door seals, sharp and chemical, strong enough to sting. I looked at the console screen. It showed all 6 pumps active with transactions running, but the numbers filling the display weren't prices. They were stacked in columns, 3 or 4 digits each, scrolling too fast to read clearly. I leaned closer and caught a few before they rolled past. Exit 84. Mile marker 91.2. Exit 77. Not gallons. Not dollars. Just distances and exit numbers, like the pumps were calculating routes instead of fuel. The numbers kept stacking, filling the screen from top to bottom, then starting over. I hit the shutoff button a 3rd time, held it down for 5 seconds. The pumps clicked off all at once, same synchronized sound as before. The screens went black. The fuel stopped midstream, leaving wet trails down the concrete and pooling under the canopy. I stood there watching the puddles spread and flatten, my hand still on the button. The quarter was gone. I looked back at the counter. The spot where it had been sitting was dry. No water ring, No quarter, just clean laminate. I checked the floor in case it had rolled off. Nothing. I opened the register drawer thinking maybe I'd put it in there without realizing, but the cash tray looked exactly how Amber had left it. I closed the drawer and looked at the counter again. It was just gone. I pulled out my phone and opened the Wi-Fi settings. The station network was still there. Sunoco, guest. No password. I connected and opened my contacts. Amber's number was in the binder under the counter, written in Sharpie on the inside cover next to "Call if emergency." I figured pumps turning on by themselves and spilling maybe 50 gallons of gas counted. I dialed. It rang once, then clicked over to voicemail. Her greeting started playing, but the sound was wrong. Her voice came through slow and stretched, every word dragging like the recording had been dunked underwater and was playing back through a bad speaker. I could still make out the words, "You've reached Amber, leave a message." But they were muffled and distorted, vowels pulling long, consonants soft and blurred. I hung up before the beep. I tried again. Same thing. Slow, wet, wrong. I put the phone down on the counter next to the laminated card and looked outside. The fuel puddles were still there under the lights, dark and glossy, but they weren't spreading anymore. No cars on the access road, no movement at the Loves across the way. Just the interstate lights in the distance and the hum of the cooler behind me. I didn't log it in the binder. Didn't know what I'd write. I kept my eyes on the pumps for the next 20 minutes. Restocked the cigarette display behind the counter without turning my back to the window for more than a few seconds at a time. A truck pulled in at 11:47, filled at pump 2, paid at the pump, and left. Normal transaction. The console showed regular numbers. Gallons, price per gallon, total. I watched the whole thing. At 11:53, the door chime rang. I looked up and saw the state trooper from earlier in the week, Paisley Sutherland. Same tight bun, same uniform, same calm expression. She walked to the coffee station and grabbed a medium cup, filled it halfway with a dark roast. Added 2 creams. She came to the counter and set the cup down. "Slow night?" "Yeah," I said. "Pretty quiet." She pulled a 5 from her wallet. I rang it up, gave her change. She picked up the coffee and took a sip, watching me over the rim. "You notice anything unusual tonight?" she asked. I thought about the quarter, the pumps, the numbers, Amber's voicemail. "Like what?" I said. "We've had a few calls about cars driving the wrong way on the ramps near this exit. Thought maybe you'd seen something from here." I shook my head. "Haven't seen anything." She nodded slowly, still watching me. "You sure? Sometimes people see things but don't think to report them. Headlights going the wrong direction, vehicles without plates, that kind of thing." I thought about Rule 5. The car with no plates at pump 6. Pull the fire alarm and leave immediately. "I haven't noticed anything," I said. She set the coffee down and pulled a card from her chest pocket, slid it across the counter. It had her name, unit number, and a phone number printed in small black text. "If you do, call that number, doesn't matter what time." I picked up the card. Unit 217. I put it in my back pocket next to the laminated rule card. "Thanks," I said. She picked up her coffee again and headed for the door. Stopped halfway and looked back. "You doing okay out here? It's pretty isolated." "I'm fine," I said. She nodded once, then pushed through the door and walked to her cruiser parked at pump 4. I watched her get in, pull out onto the access road, and turn toward the interstate. The scanner crackled. It was mounted on the shelf behind the counter next to the cigarette display, a black Uniden box with a short antenna and a lit green display. I'd heard it a few times during the shift. Dispatch chatter, unit numbers, street names. Background noise. This was different. The static cleared and a flat, toneless voice came through. "Unit 217, pause. Unit 217. No dispatch rhythm, no context, just the number. Repeated exactly the same way both times. Flat, precise. Not asking, not reporting, learning. I stared at the scanner. The green display showed the frequency, nothing else. The static returned, soft and even. I pulled the card from my pocket and looked at it again. Unit 217. I put the card on the counter next to the register and checked my phone. 12:04. 1 hour and 6 minutes until I needed to lock myself in the bathroom. The scanner stayed quiet. The pump stayed dark. I kept the card where I could see it. I turned the scanner volume down until the static disappeared completely. Didn't turn it off. Just twisted the knob on the side until the white noise faded and the shelf went quiet. Then I kept working. I restocked the chip rack even though it didn't need it. Moved the Doritos forward, rotated the Lay's, straightened the Pringles cans so the labels faced out. My hands needed something to do and I couldn't just stand there staring at the door. Every few seconds I glanced at the window checking the pumps. The console next to the register still showed all 6 units active, but the scrolling exit numbers had slowed. They weren't gone, just slower. Exit 84. Mile marker 91.2. Exit 77. The columns ticked down at maybe half speed, readable now instead of blurred. I finished with the chips and moved to the candy bars. Snickers again. I'd already done them earlier, but I pulled the row forward anyway, making sure nothing sat crooked. My phone showed 12:23. 48 minutes until I had to lock myself in the bathroom. I tried not to think about that part yet. The pump screens kept cycling through numbers. I watched them between tasks, restocked the napkins at the coffee station, refilled the stir sticks, checked the console again. Exit 77, mile marker 88.6, exit 81, slower each time I looked, like something winding down. At 12:37, pump 2 finally went dark, just blinked off mid-scroll, and the screen returned to the normal green standby. Then pump 5. Then pump 1. By 12:40, all 6 pumps sat idle again, showing regular fuel grades and prices. The console displayed what it was supposed to. Authorization codes, transaction logs, the red shutoff button I'd pressed 3 times with no effect. I stood there watching the numbers for another 5 minutes to make sure they stayed normal. They did. The fuel puddles outside had stopped spreading, but they were still there. Dark, wet patches under the canopy lights. Pump 6 had the biggest pool, maybe 3 feet across. I was supposed to clean that up, probably. Amber hadn't covered fuel spills in training, but it seemed like the kind of thing I shouldn't leave sitting. I thought about going out there with the mop and a bucket. Then I thought about standing under those lights in the open air with my back to the access road and the interstate beyond it. And I decided the puddles could wait until morning. Donald's problem, or Amber's. I pulled Trooper Sutherland's card off the counter and looked at it again. Unit 217. The same number the scanner had repeated in that flat, wrong voice. I turned the card over, blank on the back. Just her name, unit number, and phone number on the front in small black print. I thought about calling it, telling her what happened with the quarter and the pumps and the scanner. Then I thought about explaining any of that out loud and put the card back on the counter next to the laminated rule card. At 1:08, I locked the front door. I flipped the bolt, then pulled the metal handle to make sure it caught. It did. The door didn't budge. I grabbed the plastic closed sign from under the counter, white with red letters, attached to a suction cup, and stuck it to the glass at eye level. It held. I looked through the window at the empty lot. No cars, no movement, just the pumps and the dark fuel stains and the Love's sign glowing red in the distance. I picked up the laminated rule card and held it for a second, reading Rule 4 again even though I'd already memorized it. Lock yourself in the bathroom from 1:11 a.m. to 1:17 a.m. exactly. No flushing. No opening the door before 1:17. My phone showed 1:09. I walked to the back. The bathroom sat past the mop closet, next to the breaker panel. Single occupant setup, white tile, toilet, sink, paper towel dispenser, and a vent near the ceiling. Fluorescent light overhead that buzzed when I flipped the switch. I stepped inside and pulled the door shut behind me, then turned the lock. It was the kind with a push button in the handle. I pressed it and heard the bolt slide into place. 110. I set the laminated card on the edge of the sink and leaned against the wall next to the paper towel dispenser. The fluorescent tube hummed. I could hear it clearly in the enclosed space, a low electrical vibration that didn't quite match the rhythm of my breathing. I checked my phone. 1:10 and 40 seconds. The alarm I'd set went off. I swiped it away and watched the numbers change. 1:11. Nothing happened. I stayed against the wall, arms crossed, phone in one hand and the other hand flat against the tile. The bathroom smelled like industrial cleaner and something faintly sour underneath. The light kept buzzing. I counted my breaths. In for 4. Out for 4. Somewhere I'd read that helped with anxiety. It didn't really. At 1:12, the tapping started, slow at first. 3 taps, evenly spaced. Tap, tap, tap. Coming from behind the wall near the toilet. Not loud, careful, like someone testing to see if anyone was listening. I didn't move. The tapping continued. Same rhythm, same spot. Tap, tap, tap. Then it shifted. Moved up the wall toward the ceiling, following the line of the pipes or the frame or something I couldn't see. It reached the vent and stopped. I looked up. The vent was maybe 7 inches wide, metal slats angled down. Standard bathroom vent. It wasn't running, no air moving through it, just a dark grid near the ceiling. The tapping came again. This time from inside the vent, closer, sharper, metal on metal. Then the voice started. Andrew. It sounded like Amber. Same tired cadence, same flat authority. But it was coming from the vent, pushed through the slats with a weird compressed quality that made the vowels too long. Andrew, I need you to come out here. I kept my mouth shut and my eyes on the vent. Trooper Sutherland's outside. She needs to ask you something. It's important. I thought about Sutherland's card on the counter, her cruiser pulling out of the lot an hour ago. The scanner repeating her unit number in that wrong, toneless voice. Andrew, the fire alarm needs to be tested. You have to step out and pull it. Just for a second. My heart rate kicked up. I pressed my hand harder against the tile and kept breathing. In for 4. Out for 4. You're wasting time, Andrew. She's waiting. You need to open the door. The voice leaned into my name, used it at the start of every sentence. Andrew. Like that would make me trust it. Like hearing my own name in Amber's voice would override the part of my brain that knew this was wrong. Andrew, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent. Open the door. Just step out for a minute. You can go right back in. I looked at my phone. 1:14. 3 more minutes. The tapping resumed, faster now. Rattling through the vent in bursts, then stopping, then starting again. The voice kept going. Andrew, listen to me. This is part of the job. You have to open the door. I'm telling you as your supervisor. You need to come out here right now. I thought about Rule 4. No opening the door before 1:17. That was it. That was the whole instruction. Stay in here. Don't flush. Don't open the door. The rule didn't say anything about voices or tapping or someone using my name. Andrew, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Trooper Sutherland is right outside. She has questions about what you saw tonight. You need to cooperate. 1:15. I forced myself to stay still. My hands were cold, and my chest felt tight, but I kept my breathing steady and my eyes on the vent. The tapping shifted again, moved down the wall toward the door. I heard it on the other side of the wood now, directly across from me. Tap, 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 tap. Fast and insistent. Andrew, I'm losing patience. Open the door. Still Amber's voice. Still that tired, no-nonsense tone. But the edges were fraying. The words came too fast. The pauses weren't quite right. You're going to regret this, Andrew. I'm telling you to open the door. Do it now. 1:16. I watched the seconds tick over on my phone. 58, 59, 1:17. I unlocked the door. The tapping stopped instantly, just cut off mid-sound, leaving total silence except for the buzzing fluorescent light overhead. I turned the handle and stepped out into the back hallway. Nothing there. No Amber, no tapping, no sound at all except the hum of the coolers and the distant buzz of the canopy lights outside. I walked back to the counter. The closed sign was gone. I stopped in the doorway and stared at the front door. The suction cup sat on the floor below the glass, the plastic sign next to it, like it had just fallen. But the door itself stood open. Not all the way. Maybe 6 inches, enough to let in the night air and the smell of gasoline from the puddles outside. I know I locked it. I checked the bolt. I felt it catch. I walked to the counter and looked down. A stack of blue slips sat in the center of the laminate surface, thick, maybe 2 inches tall, way more than the small clipped stack Amber had shown me in the drawer. I picked up the top slip. My full name was printed across the center in small black text. Andrew Michael Harris, below it a date, March 19th, 2024. I set it aside and picked up the next one. Same name, different date. April 2nd, 2024. I went through 5 more. Everyone had my name. Everyone had a different date. I flipped faster, pulling slips from the middle of the stack, then from the bottom. June 7th, 2031. October 14th, 2046. January 23rd, 2052. Dates stretching decades ahead. Dates I wouldn't live to see. All of them printed with my name in that same small black text, neat and official and impossible. I put the stack down and stepped back from the counter. The blue slips weren't receipts. They were records. Records of me being processed. At 2:02, a sedan pulled into Pump 6. No plates on the back. No engine noise. No headlights cutting through the dark. I watched it glide past Pump 4, Pump 5, and settle at 6, with the kind of stillness that made my chest go tight. The kind where the car just stops, not parks, stops. I didn't think about it. My feet moved. I crossed the floor toward the fire alarm box mounted on the wall next to the coffee station, red metal with the white pull handle behind plastic. I'd looked at it before during Amber's training, but never thought I'd actually need it. Rule 5. Car with no plates at Pump 6. Pull the alarm and leave immediately. My hand reached for the plastic cover. Then the scanner crackled. I stopped, turned my head. The static cleared completely. Not muffled, not soft. Clear. A voice came through. Flat. No dispatch rhythm. Just words. Unit 217. Pause. Unit 217, officer down at exit 84. Immediate assistance required. My hand stayed frozen on the plastic cover. I looked back at the counter where Trooper Sutherland's card sat next to the register. Unit 217. Her number. The scanner went quiet. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead and the coffee machine hissing in the corner. I looked at the sedan outside. Still. Dark. No movement inside the windows. The scanner repeated it. Unit 217, officer down at exit 84, immediate assistance required. Same tone, same words, exactly the same. I thought about the vent voice an hour ago. Amber's voice telling me Trooper Sutherland needed to ask me something, telling me to come out, telling me the fire alarm needed testing. This was the same thing, just cleaner, more specific. I pulled my hand back from the alarm. The rules weren't safety tips. They weren't paranoia or superstition or workplace liability coverage. They were moves, specific, narrow, designed to block one outcome, and whatever was in that sedan wanted me to do exactly what the rules said. Pull the alarm, leave immediately, step outside under the canopy lights with my back to the lot while the siren wailed and no one came. I stood there for 5 seconds, maybe 10. Then I pulled the fire alarm anyway. The handle came down smooth and the siren kicked in immediately. Loud, shrill, the kind that drills into your ears and doesn't stop. The overhead lights surged bright for half a second. Then they dimmed. Not out, just dimmed, like a blink. I waited. No firefighters, no cruisers, no dispatch on the scanner, just the siren and the lights in the sedan at pump 6. The driver's door opened, no creak, no sound. It just swung out slow and something stepped onto the concrete. I couldn't see details through the window, just a shape, tall, upright, moving wrong, not slow, not fast, just wrong. Like the weight wasn't distributed right, like the timing between steps didn't match what a person should be. It oriented toward the store, toward the door. It crossed the lot in maybe 6 steps. Then it stopped at the entrance. Didn't touch the handle. Didn't push. Just stopped. Like it needed permission. I looked at the counter, at the register drawer where I'd put the blue slips back after giving one to Tim Murray. I crossed to the register and pulled the drawer open. The stack was bigger, not by 1 or 2, by maybe a dozen. The binder clip held them together, but they were thicker now, fatter. I'd given out 1 slip, just 1, and they'd multiplied. The wet quarter sat at the back of the drawer, upright, standing on its edge, not wobbling, not falling, just balanced there like something was holding it in place. I stared at it. The fire alarm wasn't rescue. It was bait. The blue slips weren't receipts. They were inventory. And I'd been stalking it by following the rules. I pulled 1 slip from the stack and tore it in half. Nothing happened. The paper ripped clean. 2 pieces in my hands. The figure outside didn't move. The quarter didn't fall. I looked at the front window. It was fogging. Not from the inside, from the outside in. Condensation spreading across the glass in uneven patches that didn't follow any temperature gradient I could explain. The siren kept wailing. I thought about Rule 3. Never ring up fuel for anyone not visible in window glass. I looked at the reflection in the fogging window. I could see the shelves, the coffee station, the ceiling lights, myself standing behind the counter. And I could see the figure at the door, but in the reflection, it wasn't shaped right. It was stretched, crowded, like multiple outlines stacked into one. Too many faces in the same space, edges that didn't line up, features that shifted when I tried to focus on them. I grabbed an intact blue slip from the drawer. Then I walked to the front door. The figure stood on the other side of the glass, close enough that I could see its hand near the handle. Pale, wet-looking. I flipped the bolt and pulled the door open 6 inches. Cold air pushed in. Not winter cold, wrong cold. The kind that sits in your chest and doesn't warm up. I held the blue slip out at arm's length. The figure tilted its head. Slow, mechanical. I kept my eyes on the window reflection behind it. In the glass, the thing's real shape showed clear. Stretched tall, faces layered over faces, mouths opening and closing out of sync, eyes in wrong places. I dropped the slip at the threshold. Then I slammed the door and flipped the bolt. The figure bent down. Its hand reached for the paper. The canopy lights outside flared. Hard, bright, steady. The reflection in the window snapped tight, clean, defined, and the thing at the door crumpled, not fell, crumpled, like it folded in on itself and turned to ash mid-collapse. The ash streaked down the base of the door in gray lines. No wind, no movement, just streaks. Pump 6 went dark, screen off, no glow. I looked at the console next to the register. All 6 pumps showed normal. Green standby, fuel grades, prices. I hit the fire alarm shutoff under the pull handle. The siren cut mid-wail. The scanner crackled. Static cleared, and a normal dispatch voice came through. Professional, clipped. Unit 217 cleared at mile marker 103, county line. Routine traffic stop, no assistance required. Different county, different exit. She'd never called from here. I stood at the counter for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20. The ash stayed where it was. The quarter in the drawer finally tipped over and lay flat. I pulled the blue slips out and counted them. 32. I'd started the night with maybe 8. I put them back and closed the drawer. The sky started lightening around 5:30, gray first, then pale orange along the horizon past the interstate. At 6:45, Amber's car pulled into the lot. She parked next to Pump 2, got out, and walked to the door. She looked at the ash streaked along the base. Didn't crouch, didn't touch it, just looked. I unlocked the door and she came inside. She went straight to the register, opened the drawer, and looked at the blue slips. She didn't count them, just looked. Then she closed the drawer and turned to me. "You did what the last clerk couldn't," she said. I didn't say anything. She walked to the back office and returned with a white envelope. She counted out $300 in cash, 10s and 20s, and set it on the counter. "The rules catch one thing per season," she said. "Not explain it. You followed them right." I picked up the envelope. "You're still on the schedule," she said. "Tonight. Same shift." I thought about the child support notice in my back pocket, the $43 I'd arrived with, the duffel bag I'd left in the bathroom. I thought about the quarter standing upright in the drawer and the thing that crumpled into ash when the reflection snapped tight. "Okay," I said. She nodded once. Then she grabbed the mop and bucket from the closet and went outside to deal with the fuel puddles under the canopy. I stayed behind the counter with the envelope in my hand, knowing the pay came attached to rules that had already tried to print my name into something I didn't want to understand. The scanner gave a routine weather update. The coffee machine hissed, and I was still on the schedule.